Welcome to What Not to Do. I'm Kyle Schmitz, and this is episode 17. I've got Andrew Schmitz with me today. He is the CEO and co-founder of Proceed. When he was in high school, his friend's dad changed his mindset on wealth, and it changed his life forever. If you asked Andrew, he would tell you, if it were easy, everyone would do it. So start. And we're going to get started in just a moment. Hold tight. All right, so I am sitting with the Andrew Schmitz at Copper State Brewing Company. He's got a fantastic last name, in case any of you were wondering.
TZ.
TZ, yeah. It's like you don't... I think I traced it back once. It's a particular point of the Netherlands, right on the border of Germany. But I think it's not just the Netherlands, but it could be Germany too, and it's amazing. So anyway, I get excited when I find someone else.
Yeah, no, that's neat. I didn't know that, so thank you.
Yeah. But have you always thought you were German or Dutch or?
German is what my understanding is from the family.
And
so.
maybe you are. So Andrew, thank you so much for being on, man.
Yeah, super excited to be here today, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we were just chatting off air and kind of getting to know each other better because it's the first time that we've sat down, and it's just exciting. And so I think that's something maybe that our listeners maybe they're aware of, maybe they don't. It's these conversations are likely just as new for me as they are for people that are listening, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's intentional. Like it's just fun. The whole concept is just, hey, let's sit down and have a cup of coffee, let's have a beer, let's have a cigar, and hear your story, and allow me to pick your brain and pass on that information, your story, your successes, your failures, your advice to the world, and
love it. Yeah.
It's awesome. So
love meeting new people too. So it's perfect.
Yeah. So and people might not know anything about you, Andrew. So you own a company called Proceed. You started founder, right?
Co-founder, yeah.
Right? And so that's super exciting. But there's more to you than just that side of things, right?
Yeah.
So maybe kind of sketch out for our listeners just a bit about who you are, what you love to do, and where you hail from. I don't know, kind of just the normal business.
For sure. Well, I'm from
are you?
Yeah, from the Appleton area. Been there pretty much my whole life. Lived with my family. I have 3 siblings.
Which high school did you go to?
I went to Xavier High School, also Appleton North. So moved from North to Xavier. I've been a theater guy, so I was involved in fine arts really heavily.
Theater?
That was, performing arts, that kind of stuff.
Tenor?
I was a tenor, but I did more technical, so behind the scenes kind of stuff through high school. Had a really good time with that, and a lot of awesome lessons that you get through being in the arts.
Oh, for sure.
And whatnot. So that's kind of like my sport. So I did that full time in high school.
Do you have a favorite production that you were part of that you recall?
Oh gosh. Well, my senior year we did Shrek the Musical, which was a lot of fun.
Interesting.
But since then, I used to do a lot of shows. I don't do as much theater as I used to, but Shrek the Musical it's a great show, great message, a lot of fun technical elements, and music and all that. So
that's so cool. Do you have any old videos of you floating around doing your thing?
Yeah, there's definitely old videos on the YouTube and all
Purposely
that.
Buried.
Yeah, no, it's all good stuff though. Awesome. It's good memories to have. And,
for sure.
And digital media lets you do that. So, so I went to high school in Appleton. I started my first company. Became an entrepreneur actually when I was in middle school. I started a DJing company.
Cool.
Did that. Didn't have to get a high school job because I was busy doing that, and decided I didn't want to be a DJ. So quickly got out of that right around the end of high school, but continued. I went took a year off of education, kind of traveled around a little bit, tested the water. Worked for a startup hospital out in Kenya, in Africa for a while, which was a great experience. Then came back, decided to go to college, dropped out of college, for a couple of reasons. I found out it wasn't for me, but then the company that I was working for was looking for a full-time project manager. They offered me the job, and so I just was like, well, okay, well, this is perfect. I can go get educated while working for a business, which is really what I wanted. So while working for that company, I started my side hustle. I loved what I was doing at that. It was a technology company in the Appleton area. Loved what I was doing there, but just always knew I wanted to work for myself someday and, kind of stir my own success. So I started a side hustle. I was helping small businesses with process documentation and building training materials. So every client that I would have, I'd approach them and say, hey, what kind of training do you need, or how can I help you basically with training your humans? And it would be from things like training videos to training websites, to training documents or PDF, binders, whatever it was, employee handbooks, whatever the deliverable was, we would draft that up, and then I would come in and deliver it. Through that, started that 3.5 years ago. Really liked it. I loved working with small businesses. I dabbled in larger businesses and didn't love it as much. But observed a few key things about working with small businesses that kind of led me to where I am today. First thing was, as a consultant, I would go into these businesses and I would have to charge them, for my time and for the tools that I needed to be able to do my work. And for a lot of small businesses, really small businesses, say like coffee shops or local restaurants and stuff like that, they couldn't necessarily, not all of them, make sense of my services, right, or my fee structure. So I didn't love that about it. The other thing I didn't like about it is that it wasn't scalable. If I was going to scale this, I'd have to find another person to do the work that I was doing, and didn't like that dependence on hiring rock stars to be able to do this work. And then the other observation I made was that there's a lot of skepticism, especially when you go into a small business that has rockstar employees that they've been relying on for so long. As soon as you go in there with a camera and you start documenting all the knowledge and know-how that they have, it turns out the employees don't really like that, or a lot of the employees didn't really care for that. I got a lot of different messaging, but some of it was how you're coming in here for a day and you're going to document everything that I know from the last 30 years. Come on, you're crazy. You're going to be back here in 2 weeks and you're going to be charging us, over and over again, and they had some messaging was, you're just documenting this stuff so they can fire me and, hire someone, cheaper and younger to take over. So with these observations, I realized what I was doing wasn't, I recognized that small businesses really needed this kind of work, but there were, these obstacles in the way that just prevented me from going in and doing consulting work for them to help them with these obstacles. So from that, I developed the concept for Proceed about 2 years ago. I built a prototype for Proceed using Snapchat. So basically the concept was, I can make this private Snapchat account. I can put it on employee, the businesses, the business that I was helping, their employees' phones, show them how to make a Snap story, and then at the end of the day, I could download the Snap story, upload it to a website that was private for that company, and then ship it to their employees for training and repetitive learning. So I did that for a couple of my clients, and turns out they really loved it. The employees liked the idea that they were contributing to their legacy, and that they were, documenting this important knowledge that the business depends on, and that they were, at the core of it. And it was also just, it was cool because I didn't have to be there to do it, you know.
Yeah.
But of course,
More
it was
scalable.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, it was Snapchat, so like, you know, there was no hiding that. It was the little ghost guy on the icon. So that's kind of where the idea for Proceed came, though, was using, you know, technology that was already available to me, kind of piecing things together and deciding like, hey, well, actually, maybe there's a market here.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I tested a few key assumptions that way on the product. And then in March of 2019, I basically was, after testing the Snapchat method with a few clients, I, you know, sat down and reflected on a few metrics in my life and said, you know, what am I going to do with this, right? Am I going to, you know, I can't continue doing the Snapchat thing. Like, obviously, it worked for like clients that I was really close with and had a good relationship with. But if I were to approach a new client, like, I don't know how they would feel about, like, you know, and I can't scale that too big. So I you know, sat down, measured a few things in my life, and decided like, okay, well, I need to take the next step on this. So in March, I quit my job. Then full-time on Proceed since then. I spent from March to May finding a team, launched the business in May with 2 other co-founders, and we just rolled out to our early adopters about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So in January of 2020 here, and we're full steam ahead, moving along. Yeah.
That's so awesome, man. But you never graduated college. You dropped out.
Yeah, you know, I used to joke around like, yeah, I'm a college dropout, you know, and it didn't really feel that way like when I did it. To me, it felt like more, you know, I was offered a salary that I thought I could achieve, you know, like that I thought I would achieve after getting a bachelor's degree. So I looked at that and I was like, well, you know, what's the point of this? And honestly, the opportunity just felt right. I wasn't happy in college. I really just wanted to, you know, be in business just learn through being in business. So.
Now, you probably had a lot of folks along the way, you know, dismiss you because you didn't have a college education.
No, actually not. Like, and that was actually one of the, like, later while reflecting, you know, I've been in a lot of meetings with either with my own idea that I'm trying to pitch to a group of people, or while working, you know, for a technology company where I'm selling, you know, whatever it was, or talking with them about product research. And never once has someone been like, hey, you know, what kind of credential do you have to sit here today?
Where's your resume?
Show me your resume before you enter. Yeah, what was that? No, nothing like that. So, you know, I'm definitely not against getting educated or anything like that. I think, matter of fact, I worked in education for a while and actually worked at a local college and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, I think it's a really good thing. It just has to be right. It has to be part of your vision, right?
Yeah.
And that was for me. What I realized is, like, I didn't have a vivid vision for where I was going with this college degree, and so I was just wasting my own time and money, really.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, just good stuff. If, you know, folks are listening to this and you're wrestling with, you know, maybe you're younger, maybe you're thinking about, or maybe you're a little bit older, maybe you're thinking about going back to school because you never finished. It's not so much about, you know, I think education is so important, and there's more than one way to get it. And
for sure.
And what we're distilling from your experience here is opportunity cost. You know, like you had, you know, you could have gone and stayed throughout school and been paying someone else to give you an education of how to do something, but not really modeling or exemplifying that for you. In the meantime, you had another path to get educated, but to be paid to get educated, to be shaped and molded in real, you know, and that's the thing. It's that you were really iterating, right? But in your life journey, and you're using the tools on hand to do that, you know, a la Snapchat, right? I mean, it's a really cool thing to where education
doesn't always have to come in a college diploma, right? It doesn't have to be in that. It could be a really good fit for somebody.
It doesn't have to be formal. It can be very informal.
So even with that, so then I'm curious, like, a lot of the concepts that you're sharing, kind of talking about, are those things that you glean in retrospect, or like what was your process of learning? Can you kind of unpack, like, I guess your mindset and then like your experience and how you learned and how you got to be where you are today? Did you have someone that was like kind of coaching you or mentoring you, or were you reading books or listening to podcasts, or like what was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge podcast listener, so I'm really excited to be on your podcast.
We can do multiple episodes.
But yeah, so podcasts have been a huge helper for me, especially I would consider like our area, especially down in Appleton, to be like a developing entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? And the best advice that I've gotten for my own businesses, but even while working for someone else, has been through talking with other entrepreneurs or business owners and hearing what they have done wrong or what they have done right, and getting the insight and knowledge from them, which is awesome. With podcasting, you can get people's knowledge bits from all over the country and the world, right? Like you don't have to be sitting down for coffee to get it. You can put it on in your car and drive. So podcasts for me have been huge, but also I have some really strong mentors in my life. My father's been a small business owner his whole life, and a carpenter, so a builder, who I've gotten a lot of great lessons from. There's a handful of great business leaders and mentors that I've had that have made an impact in my life, including the awesome CEO that did hire me when I dropped out of college and gave me a shot, which I'm very grateful for.
That's so awesome. And then you made the most of it, which is huge. I think that's one of the coolest things, like especially in our day and age, how technology has decentralized everything. Like that, we have the access, to learn about pretty much anything we want to in our pockets. Right. And so I hope, for those of you guys who are listening, I hope your story, Andrew, is really encouraging to folks that might feel stuck in college, like what am I doing here, right? And I'd rather be doing this, or again, if they're struggling with like wanting to go back. College can be a really, really good thing, and then taking it in that formal sense.
For sure.
There are other ways, and if it doesn't align with your ultimate vision, and like once you get clear on what you want in life and what you're going for, if college is aligned, there's other ways to learn what you need to know and to leverage that in the world in service to others that will yield economic results for you, right? And that's a good path to take.
For sure. I think the biggest thing that's helped me, kind of method that I've subscribed to, is all of the business ventures or ideas that I've sat down and developed a really vivid vision for where I'm going. Those have been the ones that have succeeded. The ones where I don't have a vivid vision, or even just things in life where I don't sit down and really think in full detail, like, where do I want this to go, or what is my next step? What are the next 5 steps, whatever it is. Those things have always failed me, or I've left them very not satisfied. And that honestly is with college for me. I didn't sit down and I didn't have a vivid vision for where I was going to go with college and how I was going to use college as a vehicle to bring me to the next level, and that is probably why I wasn't successful. So I'll blame myself for that as well. But things worked out, and I learned from that as well. That no regrets at all. I mean, I've had a awesome ride so far.
Can you imagine where you would have been had you turned down the project management job and stayed in college?
For sure. I don't know where I'd be.
Right, exactly. So I wouldn't even look at that as like a failure by any means. I think you had a good head on your shoulders at the time, and you had 2 options, and you chose the better one. For sure. There could be, at the time, there could have been more perceived risk with that, but in a sense there wasn't. You're getting paid to learn versus paying to learn. And you had, going to the project manager role, at least gave you a little bit, maybe aligned more with that vision of where you maybe wanted to be long-term in life.
Well, definitely,
And then you couldn't make sense of the college piece, so then it kind of became a no-brainer as far as which path you would take. And so I think that's awesome, man. I think I think more people could stand to take a clear look at that. And again, that's no knock on college. They're just saying it doesn't have to be only college. It doesn't have to be only this way. You know, consider the options at hand, considering what you have around you, and it's just amazing what people can do.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, this is Kyle. Well done on your decision today to be great. Those are my kiddos in the background. Hey, if you want more of this kind of content, find me on social media. We'll keep the conversation going. You can hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, at StartWithWNTD. Again, at StartWithWNTD. We'll see you there.
All right, man. So take us a little bit behind the scenes into why. Why do you do what you do? You know, so maybe for you, like, what is that clear vision, and how does it relate to Proceed, and like, what's that greater purpose or vision behind why you're doing what you're doing that keeps you waking up and wanting to see through Proceed to ultimate success, whatever that means.
Yeah, so Proceed, I should probably say what our mission is with Proceed. We're helping small businesses or small teams use visuals in their knowledge sharing. So a couple things to unpack about that. Small teams and small businesses, at least, and this is a very general statement, so definitely not every small team and every small business. But a lot of them have a hard time with efficient knowledge management or knowledge sharing. And that's something I realized, back when I got started with consulting with these businesses is like, the reason why you have a hard time onboarding employees is because you have no clarity in how you onboard employees. And the training that you offer them is not great, to say the least. And so, I dug into why don't you have great training, and why are people choosing, or why do employees have a better onboarding experience at maybe a larger company than at your company? And so I realized that sure, there's a lot of tools out there that small business owners can use and small business managers can use to develop training, but something that they kept coming back to me as a consultant is because I used a lot of visuals in my documents and in my deliverables that I was giving them. And so I realized very quickly, as a visual learner, and 60% of us are visual learners, that visuals are one of the best ways to receive information, and also the highest bandwidth way for humans to receive information. Until they build some helmet that you can put on and zap knowledge from artificial intelligence machines and all this kind of stuff into your brain, visuals are, in my opinion, and I've yet to see something different, the best and the fastest way to receive information. So what our mission is, and why we do what we do is, we think that when you can use short videos or images, screenshots, these kind of things in your training materials, you will have not only more efficient training, but your employees will feel like they know what they're doing, with higher accuracy and more confidence, which not only makes them feel better as I'm doing my job right, but they feel more secure in their job, and they feel like they actually know what they're doing. So our why I wake up every day and go to the office and work with the team on developing our product, and also work with our early adopters to see how we can make our product better, is because we want small businesses and small teams to be competitive. Large companies, they have lots of, they have knowledge loss prevention teams. They have, HR onboarding, people that focus on making the onboarding experience pleasant and efficient. For small businesses, they just don't have that luxury. And so we're trying to, make it easier to get into the digital ecosystem, using really amazing, strong visuals, to their advantage, and so that they can stay competitive with knowledge management. Which is kind of interesting. A lot of people don't think about knowledge management as a way of staying competitive, but it really is. It's when you can train people faster, or maybe even on demand, instead of as they receive the knowledge as they need it. When you can streamline it that or make it that efficient, it is a competitive thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so you're really, in a sense, jealous for the cultivation of human capital within companies. So not only that they experience success, but so they stick around, right?
Yeah.
So that you're playing in that gap between the sole proprietor, or maybe you'd appeal to the sole proprietor, but if it's just a one-person company, then there might not be the same kind of perceived benefit as if the team were 5 or 10 or 50 or 100, and then over against. How do you compete against some of the bigger fish in the pond, which is not your playing space? Like, they've got learning management systems and all that kind of stuff, and you're saying, hey, what's something that's really accessible, flexible here to continue to develop that human capital within the organization? Why? Because we really care about the success long term, and then even think about how that can be passed down from the original founder of that small business to is the son going to take over? Is another employee going to take over? And how can this perpetuate the legacy here? It seems kind of like that you're really getting at that idea, is helping to sustain legacies by cultivating the human capital and then also the intellectual capital within that organization. Does that make sense?
I mean, we've discovered a lot of really cool things about how people use our technology, and it's different depending on the business and the business needs, but one of it is, definitely succession planning, right? Like, how do you take the knowledge that the people who've been here for 30 years and transfer it to the incoming workforce in a way that the incoming workforce prefers to receive information through visuals, through their phones, tablets, technology, whatever it is. But then also, so that's succession planning, which is really a lot of manufacturing clients that we have are using it for that. They've had these rock star employees that are, 60% of the workforce is up for retirement in the next 10 years. So, that's massive turnover, right? And you need a good way of packaging up the knowledge that they have and letting them share their legacy with the incoming workforce. But then, you also have like food service, like Panera released a report last year or something that 150% turnover in their restaurants. So they have a lot of food service compliance, issues that they have to take care of, and with basically a revolving door for employees, like how do you rapidly train these people and make sure that they're getting the training from the top instead of secondhand training, right? Kind of like the telephone game. By the time the message gets to the last employee, are they doing it the right way? It's depending on the needs of, or what the nature of the business and what they need. But the other thing, you mentioned a sole proprietor. Well, we're talking to a couple of our early adopters that are like 1 or 2 person businesses, but they have big vision, their vision is to scale. How can you delegate to, new team members and get the, when you bring on someone and you're starting to scale and step on the gas, how can you make sure that they have the knowledge that they need to succeed in your business? So it's kind of interesting. I mean, we have companies all across the board, but the main thing that ties them together is that they're what we would consider small teams.
Yeah, I love it, man. There's so for my own studies, for a while I dug into ultra wealthy families, right? And when you have this kind of generational wealth, and you probably heard this before, where the first generation creates the wealth, the second generation manages the wealth, and the third generation squanders the wealth. Right? It's all gone. Right? And one of the biggest issues in that is that the succeeding generations weren't taught how to create wealth. Right? And they weren't taught, in a sense, how to manage it. You could see the gaps there. So if every generation was not taught, not only taught how to create the wealth, but to manage it, you could perpetuate that legacy, right?
For sure.
In that study, I uncovered, I think the guy might be, I think his name is James Hughes. Just want to give credit where credit's due. He talks about, in these families, you really have three different forms of capital when you're considering ultra wealthy families. The first is human capital. The second is intellectual capital. And the third is financial capital. Mm-hmm. And he talks about how, what you see in this, why after 3 generations it's all gone. It's because the human capital wasn't being developed or cultivated, right, in each generation. And secondly, the intellectual capital, so a lot of these, ultra wealthy families had some kind of family business, some kind of niche, right? Mm-hmm. And was that form of capital, that intellectual capital, was that being passed down? Right, so the next person could really manage and run the the business well, or it would end up going to an outsider or something like that. And then third, if you get the human and the intellectual right, it should yield financial capital, which then to keep the flywheel going needs to be reinvested into human capital.
For sure.
And it struck me reading through this is that if that's true for a family, that's true for an individual. It's true for a Fortune 500 company. It's true for a church. It's true for a government. It's true for any body of people, no matter how big or how small, right? Because it's all like a fractal, right? And so, what I love about what you guys are doing is you guys are actually really helping that exact model, that idea of these 3 basic forms of capital in any kind of body or organization, right? Be it to the individual, to whatever, Walmart. Yeah. You're helping that by cultivating the human capital and helping then that's feeding into how you develop the intellectual capital for that particular business, which then, God willing, and the creek don't rise, right? It should yield financial capital, which then will hopefully be reinvested back into the human capital, which will create that succession planning and hopefully the stability and really perpetuate the legacy for that business. I love it. That's right up my alley.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear.
You guys are pressing into that, which is awesome. We need more of that. We need more of that. So
yeah, I love it, and you're exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right.
It's awesome.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, and only if you think the show deserves it, would you go over to Apple Podcasts and give us an honest, thoughtful 5-star review? This will really help us in our mission to equip the world for success.
All right, man. So let's get into the juicy details. Not so much juicy, but I think it's good just to kind of look back and think in the tech world they call it a retrospective. But it's kind of fun just to look back and think on our own journey, our own story, our own experience. And we're obviously doing that here to hopefully help folks that are listening, all 7 billion people right now, right? And but for you, Andrew, as you've been looking back through your life iteration, if you will, what are some things that you've done right? So you've had success, you've seen increasing success, which is awesome. I'm sure you've had some failures along the way, which we'll get to. But as you look back, man, what are some things that you did right, decisions you made, choices you made, whatever it might be, that kind of naturally rise to the top of others? What comes to mind when you look back and think of your success and what you did right?
Yeah, for sure. Specifically with Proceed, something that I know that I did right, and it was from previous past failures that I finally woke up to it. But something that I think we did really correct is we started out with a prototype, and my rule with and again, this is through past failures, but with technology ventures, you always need to test your assumptions and de-risk your idea. And ideally, you would do this without coding anything or developing any, really, without basically developing a product, right? A lot of people, and I was guilty of this too a while back with other ventures, but you think I can't, I need this or I need that before I can, sell this product or before I can decide that it's a real business. But something we did really correct, or really well, I think, I shouldn't say correct, but really well with Proceed is that, I built a prototype without any code, was able to
You're referring to Snapchat, right?
Yeah, with the Snapchat model, and then even after that, we did a few things to test some further assumptions. But without writing any code, was able to determine people like this They like, certain things about it that don't exist today in another product. And maybe some things exist, but other things don't. We were able to de-risk the idea before writing a single line of specific code for Proceed.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I would recommend to anyone thinking about going into any kind of technology product, because it's saved me so much time and hassle. Because if I would have built what we have today without de-risking it, I would have spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and then potentially could have found, well, hey, actually, no one wants this.
Yeah, you could have built what you have today, but it wouldn't have been what you have today because of all the feedback that you've gotten.
Yeah, exactly.
Through that process.
Yeah,
and it's shaped what you've done today.
Yeah, we were able to prioritize certain things that we thought would have been really handy. Turns out no one cared about. We were able to de-risk a lot of the idea and the concept early on. So that is a recommendation I would make to anyone who's starting any kind of technology, especially software apps.
Yeah.
There's probably a way of building it without coding it or building it, they call it, man behind the curtain, right? With the Wizard of Oz, and that's basically what Proceed was. You use Snapchat, and then man behind the curtain was me downloading it every night and uploading it to a private WordPress site.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that. And looking back on it, I thought we did some really, I made a lot of great decisions in that phase of the company.
Yeah, which is awesome. So, I guess taking that home or distilling it, whatever industry that you might be in, for our listeners, look at what you have around you. Look at the tools, the resources, all kind of stuff, and see how you can leverage those first before you try to build something from scratch.
Yeah.
Because you might not know what you actually need to build, and by following this kind of a process of, hey, what's around me, what's within my reach, and what can I use, you're going to get a lot better market feedback, and like you said, test those assumptions so you can really know what the demand is. You can both quantify and qualify it.
Yeah.
So that because it's not necessarily the long game, you eventually built your own thing, right? You're not going to use, maybe you won't use those tools forever, but you might be able to use them for a lot longer than what you think. And there's less risk involved, less capital.
For sure.
Not even just from a monetary perspective, but also time, like you said, how much time it would have taken you to build something that you didn't know if someone actually wanted it in that way.
Yeah.
And that's important because it's easy to think that, oh, well, hey, we just, of course someone's going to want this. I want this, so of course someone else is going to want it.
Yeah, it's a really easy trap to fall into.
Yeah.
And you think, you'll open the door and people will flood in, and it's definitely not the case. The other thing I'll say is, so that whole method of, starting with a really simple prototype and growing on it is something I learned from Lean Startup. I don't know if you've heard of that book by Eric Ries.
Oh, yeah, got it.
That whole method of, developing your company around building an MVP, a minimal viable product, and testing assumptions, key assumptions. I got from that book, and it was super helpful and influenced the way we built this company.
Yeah, and he talked, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he talks about in that book the importance of iteration, right?
Yeah.
Not waiting to build out, this perfect product or company.
Because you're wrong.
And then because you're wrong.
You'll make the wrong thing.
The other part is how it actually brings your future customers or clients into that sense of ownership when you release, Proceed 1.0 right on Snapchat. Well, they're giving you direct feedback. Hey, this sucks,
Yeah.
But you're asking for their feedback, and it sucks.
Yeah.
So, so they're helping to shape it, which gives them more buy-in, more ownership.
People love that.
Yeah, and they want that sense of hey, we're helping to build this too, even though we're paying for it.
Yeah, and we love it. We need it too. So they like knowing that they have an impact on a local technology company that hopefully will provide them value.
Yeah.
At a great rate.
Right.
But for us, we get real life, feedback, and we get to build a product around people's actual pain points, and we get to solve their actual issues, which is really awesome. And so we follow the Lean Startup Playbook pretty closely. I mean, it's something that I've subscribed to and learned a lot from reading that book. Yeah. So that's something I feel we did right.
Yep. Cool. What else?
In the right bucket, so
he's only done one thing right, folks.
Yeah, no.
You've heard it here.
Yeah, that's it. Go home. Yeah, I mean, we leaned out to a lot of local businesses too, and kind of going along the same thing that we were just talking about, building strong partnerships. I think it takes a community, right, to start a company and to grow a company especially. And so one of those things that I think we did really well, and it's proving today as we're early in our launch, our strong partnerships with local businesses have been phenomenal and have paid dividends to us already, only being 2 weeks into our launch. Partner with the community that supports you, I think is really helpful.
All right, I want to know, who's next? Who do you want to hear on what not to do? Which entrepreneur, which leader, which public figure in your network do you want to hear on the show? Maybe it's you. Maybe you need to be here. So let's connect me with whomever, and we'll sit down for coffee, a beer, or even a cigar, and together equip the world for success.
Otherwise, in terms of rights, from a personal development standpoint, I'll tell people, because I get asked this all the time when I say, I'm full-time on Proceed, and they'll say, well, how do you support yourself and how do you do all this? One of the metrics
Rice and beans, baby.
I mean, I say, one of the metrics I paid attention to when I was deciding, okay, should I get serious about my side hustle or should I just continue working my job and kind of let that coast? But one of the metrics that I paid attention to was, how much do I have in my savings account? Can I buy myself a year? Can I buy myself 18 months, whatever it is? But then also I was able to grow my side consulting business to a point where I could live on part-time effort on ramen noodles, right? I've never had ramen noodles in my life, but you get the point. It's you can have a life, you can pay the bills, but then I can free up some of my time to focus on, and actually a lot of my time to focus on Proceed. So that's one of the things that I felt I did correctly I'm coming up on 1 year of supporting myself as a independent business owner and as an entrepreneur, I look back frequently on that was actually the right move. I weighed my finances, my personal finances, weighed how long I thought it would take, how much runway I would need, and I'm still living today. So
alive and well, I can testify. So that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's good to take those measured risks, and it's different for every person, and it's different for the capacities. I mean, it's but it's important that everyone stops and just says, hey, where am I at? Making sure that process is the handoff as well, right? The transition is smooth, because that can really dictate where things go and how things go, right?
For sure.
Which is cool. Very, very cool. Okay, so let's get into what you did wrong. So as you look back over the course of your journey so far, not looking for skeletons in the closet or trade secrets or anything like that, right? But what's something, a few failures that just kind of rise to the top, kind of stand out above all else. It's like, man, you know what? No regrets, but if I could have that one back, totally would. What sticks out to you, man, in your mind? So
with Proceed, this was the first business venture that I decided to get involved with business partners, and as anyone who's has a business with partners, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong with getting into a relationship like that.
You mean relationships are messy?
Yeah, imagine that. And so, like, my biggest thing with Proceed is, and I'll be open with everyone, the partners that I started with in May of 2019 are not the partners that I have today. And that was probably like my biggest lesson so far with Proceed has been, when you decide to embark on a business venture with other people, it goes back to vision, but your visions have to align. And maybe not even align, but as the leader, you have to make sure your vision is crystal clear and very vivid. And so I realized, I kind of rushed into this partnership with my original co-founders that, after working with them for a while, I realized, no, this isn't our team. We have our differences here, and we're not aligned. And fortunately for me, the co-founders also understood that, and we had a very amicable conversation about how we're going to proceed forward with this company.
Pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. It was very intentional. But with that, I realized, we spent a few months working together and realized that, this wasn't the right fit. And in reflection, you think, well, if that would have been the right team, and while recruiting the next team, are these people that you want to see every day? Are these people that you want to work with? It's the same kind of questions that I asked when I was courting my fiance. Is this someone?
You didn't tell us you're married.
Well, I'm engaged, so.
You didn't say it was a woman. Madagascar? No. King Julian?
I like that movie. I'm not recalling right now, but yeah. So it's very much like that, and I think a lot of people will tell you that advice, right? Like a partnership is like a marriage, if not, sometimes more. Not more serious, but just as serious as a marriage in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It's a business partner, in a sense.
You're dependent on them, and they're dependent on you, and all of that. So, and in many ways, I see my business partner sometimes more frequently than my fiance that I'm choosing to spend the rest of my life with. In terms of lessons or things that I've done incorrectly, vetting that first team or courting that first team, those original co-founders could have done that a little better. And again, it was a very the divorce was very easy in hindsight. Luckily we all agreed that this wasn't the right fit. But in hindsight, it could have saved me some time. It could have saved me some hair. It could have been maybe a little more efficient. But
so, if you were to tell someone just shorthandedly, don't do this, how would you phrase it?
Don't rush into a business partnership. And don't. In my case, I think what it was is I'm a non-technical tech founder, right? So if you're non-technical and you're starting a tech company, you think, well, I need tech people, right? How can I do that? Either you pay for them, which I didn't have that kind of money, or you sell them on the idea, you sell them on the vision, or you're supposed to sell them on the vision, and then you recruit tech people that way with equity, and so for me, I thought this is very necessary. I need to quickly go find some tech founders, and I actually find that this is not the case. There's a lot of stuff you can do to continue to de-risk your idea while you're still finding the tech talent or the tech side of the business. Right now, I have an awesome team. We but it was, I got to know these guys over the course of several months. And then when I was finally, departed with the original team, was able to, hey, are you guys interested in joining Proceed and taking us to the next level? So if I had to simplify it, I would say don't rush into a tech partnership or into a business partnership. And take your time, court them. Go on dates, or whatever it is, but make sure that they're the right fit.
That's so good. Yeah, and even as a subset of that, don't assume buy-in into the vision. Don't assume, and that would come to that courtship process, but don't assume that they're just going to buy into the vision. Make sure that they get the vision and that they love it, right? And that they're all in.
And that's on you, right?
Exactly.
That's on, and that's why I'll take full responsibility. I didn't make a crystal clear vision for the original team, and I think that was one of the biggest reasons why it didn't work out. And so you learn from that, but you have to, vision is so important. And will pay dividends if you're able to clarify it enough.
And that's it's one thing. I think anyone can come up with a vision. The work is in holding that vision and holding it for others. Inspiring others to that vision.
And the vision can change, and it should change. It just, when it changes, everyone has to realign to it, right? And that's, again, on you as the leader of whatever you're leading.
Well, it is one of my main goals to give you more in use value than what I take from you in cash value. And so, man, I love that this podcast is for free. And I really hope that you are finding just incredible value. Who knows, maybe in one of these episodes, you'll take an idea that will be worth $1 million to you. And that's so awesome. If you believe in this and what we're doing here and you'd like to give, you can go to patreon.com/whatnotttodo and you can give according to your heart's desire. But seriously, every little bit helps in our mission to equip the world for success. Thank you so much.
All right, man, that's really good. So what else? So don't rush into partnerships. So important. And like you said, in all of life, right? And anything that we're engaged in, personal and professional, we want to. What's the saying? That we're the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And I think there's a principle there that's just true in so many different aspects of life. Whether it's seeking, people out that you're going to be building a business with, or starting a family with, or whatever it might be, or just friends, right? That's good. What else, man, comes to mind as far as a failure in particular in your life?
Well, I mean, so one of the failures, building off of the thing I feel we did correctly at Proceed was based on a bunch of failure that I had in other ventures. And so something I always tell people is, like I said earlier, find a way to test your assumptions before, fantasizing too much about where you're going to go, right? Build a vision, but then find a way to test it as soon as you can, as fast as you can. One of the people that I look up to is Keith Cunningham, and he commonly says what's one thing that you don't know? And he says, it's your assumptions. Sometimes you don't even realize that you're assuming certain things. And so drilling down deeper into the assumptions is one thing that I would recommend to everyone to do, especially with technology. Because, there's a lot of ways that you can prototype things nowadays. If it's using something like, a Snapchat that isn't for what you're wanting to do, but similar functionality, or if it's using what you see is what you get builder, as an app that I found last year that I love and recommend to everyone is called... now I'm going to totally forget what it's called.
It's so great.
It's I just got to pull it up now.
Yeah, do it.
But it's basically it's Glide Apps. So glideapps.com. This is basically, you can build a beautiful looking application. Anyone can do this. And the back end, so what, developers, the database or the, functionality behind it is a Google sheet. So you can make an app that your users can log into, they can manipulate data and see changes happen within their app, and anyone can build this with no code in as little as like 1 hour using a Google Sheet. And it's a great way to test assumptions,
That's really cool.
like there's video tutorials out there of people building what is Airbnb with Glide apps, So, figuring out those kind of things.
Could that be a long-term thing? Could you keep that technology, or would you want to move on?
Well, you could, yeah, but it's also just a super cheap way. You can build a free app, and they just brand it with their Glide apps on the bottom, or you can pay to upgrade it to something where they have no branding and where you can accept payments through it and that kind of stuff. So you totally could. I mean, there's no rules in this business, right? I mean, there are rules and laws and stuff, but you could totally build. An app that you sell as a Glide app. There's some latency things that you don't want to consider, but it's just a great way of prototyping, though.
Exactly. Yeah. So how would you say that or phrase it in kind of a shorthanded way of like, don't do this?
Yeah. Don't think that you need to develop an actual app to test your assumptions. Or develop an actual product to start testing your assumptions. Okay. There are always things that you can do today to start de-risking your idea and making it more attractive to an investor, or to, in my case, getting developer partners on board. And that, to me, in my case, I was able to de-risk the idea enough where I could talk to a developer and say, hey, there's an opportunity here. Here's use cases that I've already gotten from, this crappy technology that I've pieced together through a Wizard of Oz, man behind the curtain method, and they're willing to pay for it. And here's what I've collected from them, and here's them actually using it. That's so much easier to say, yeah, okay, I'll develop this for you, and for a stake of the pie, sure, yeah, let's go for it. It's so much easier to recruit after you've de-risked your idea like that.
And just to expand on the importance of that, is because speed is everything, right? You want in a sense, you want to get whatever you have to market fast, knowing that it's not going to be anywhere near perfect.
Yeah.
But the reason you want it there is so you can get the customer feedback interaction, so you can start to build and iterate down that right path, versus just, I think maybe sometimes this is one thing that keeps people from actually launching a business altogether, as they say, well, oh man, how am I going to create this app? How am I going to create this product? They spend all this time, they're saying, I don't know if I got this. And it's like, you just wasted 5 years of your life, You could have launched, 4.5 years ago, right? What's around you? What are those resources around you that you can have a prototype, low risk, all that kind of stuff to get something out, start testing it, so you start ping-ponging back and forth with the actual market that you want to be playing in to test that demand, and realize if you got game or not, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's important. So that idea of just the idea of speed being important, and we could take that in the wrong way. We just rush into things, and that's what I'm talking about. But getting your concept, your idea to market so you can test it.
Yeah. But I'd rather rush into a failure than take my time into it. Right.
What's the saying? Fail fast, fail hard.
Yeah, exactly.
And failure in one sense is not the long-term goal. It's not the macro goal.
No.
In the short term, as you're iterating and cultivating that product, it is a goal. You want to test its limits. You want to test its ends. You want to see its weaknesses. And you can't do that if you never get it to market.
Yeah,
You're just living in the ivory tower of your mind. And
I love that.
Yeah, so that's good. Anything else, man, that comes to mind as looking back over your life, and you would just readily be like, dude, don't do this?
I mean, there is the barrier that a lot of non-tech people have as well, that they can't develop a technology product because they're non-tech. And that is something I got over relatively quickly in my life. But, there are a lot of tech people out there that don't have the skills that you have. And that can be developing value, or identifying value and figuring out what triggers people to buy based on that value. Marketing, sales, these kind of skills are needed in every company, but especially in a technology company. And so you don't have to be a tech person to get into it. I think a lot of people use that as a barrier not to do something. They can have a great idea, but they say, well, I don't know how to code, so I can't get into that. I think that's not true at all. I mean, a lot of successful technology companies were started by people who have never written a line of code in their life.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's probably helpful. So, I don't know, would you say, how would you phrase that? Don't think you need to be a tech guy to be in tech, or how would how would you encourage someone?
Yeah, don't think. Yeah, I think what you said is pretty good. I mean, don't think that you need technical skills or that you need the technical skills to start your company. There's a lot of things, and I think the whole theme of what I've been saying is, there's a lot of ways to test those assumptions that require no tech skills. It's just about being creative.
Yeah, and it comes back to really the importance and the hard work of casting the vision and holding it. And that's you don't have to have tech skills to do that. You have to have a vision and a clear purpose, and help to develop a plan of execution that others can follow. You could probably expand that from the tech industry to any industry, right?
For sure.
You don't. You mentioned that your dad was in building and a carpenter, right? You don't have to have carpenter skills to build, a home building business, right?
No.
But you do need the clarity of vision, and you do need to have a plan that you can execute and inspire and then you can find the folks that have those technical skills, whether it's carpentry or code or whatever it might be, to help make reality your vision.
Exactly.
That's awesome, man. Well, pretend that I'm a guy that's coming to you and saying, Andrew, I love what you're doing, man. I heard your podcast and what not to do, and I'm just so inspired. Can I buy a cup of coffee, and can you kind of help me kind of just chart a path of how I could kind of get started on this road? I've learned so much from you already, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. So we're sitting here and this, that, and the other thing, and as you're looking back over your life and kind of thinking through what you did right, what you did wrong, and how would you maybe counsel me, or even think of it as how would you counsel younger Andrew? How might you go about doing things just a little bit differently to help avoid some of the same failures and mistakes, or for the young guy that you're sitting down with, assuming you don't want him to suffer, needlessly, and knowing that he's going to make all of his own mistakes and failures, right? So that's inescapable. But he doesn't. You have the opportunity to help him to at least not make the same ones that you made. How might you counsel him to go about things a little bit differently?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is start. I think a lot of people say that, but if I were to think back on my life, there's always the age thing, and I'm a young guy. And
how old are you?
23. So
23 years old, ladies and gentlemen.
But and one of those things that I wish I would have done earlier was just start earlier. I still have a lot of failure ahead of me, a lot of hopefully success ahead of me as well.
Yeah.
But I think about even with Proceed, it's why did I wait so long? What? Yeah, I guess my if I were to go back, I would have just started earlier.
Why is that important?
Because I think it's more important about why you haven't started, right? It's because you've set some kind of boundary or limit in your mind that prevents you from, picking up the phone, or prevents you from registering that domain on GoDaddy or whatever it is, right? I think the mental game of starting and what prevents you from starting is what bothers me most about that.
Yeah, for sure. Man, that's so good. It's And I guess one thing that comes to mind too is like how valuable time is. And I mean, you've heard probably the parable of, if a penny compounded every day for 30 days.
For sure.
After 2 weeks, you only get $115. Once you get into the mid-20s, you're up to a couple thousand. By day 30, you hit 5 million. 31, you hit 10 million, right?
Yeah.
And what you're saying is the longer that you wait, the longer you are delaying that process of compounding interest, because you're going to have to go through the process. It's inescapable, right? It's going to be slow-moving, heavy lifting up front. But the longer that you wait, the longer it's going to take to actually experience the results. So you're going to have to go through that process of compounding. So start earlier, right? Start earlier. Learn the mistakes, go through the slogging, the heavy lifting. Have you read Good to Great, Jim Collins?
I haven't.
He talks about that flywheel concept of like when you're first pushing the flywheel, it seems super heavy and you're just barely slugging along. But eventually, it gets going a little bit faster and a little bit faster and a little bit faster and a little bit faster. To pretty soon, it's just you can't stop it. It's pushing itself. And I liken that to compounding interest. So there's a similar dynamic and principle there.
Yeah.
Just another picture. And I think that's really, really important. Of why start earlier is because it's not going to push itself. You have to start pushing. And the sooner that you do it, the sooner that you're going to be able to really reap the rewards and the benefits, which is much more than monetary. But including that, right? You're going to be able to reap those rewards sooner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I like that. And you'll always find like reasons not to start, but you just really need to just start.
What are a couple of reasons you've heard of people why they haven't started that you just think are bogus?
Well, I mean, I think like I'm not a tech person. Okay, well I can't start. I have my job, and I'm like I don't have any time. Well, if it was a priority, you'd make time. These kind of things. And of course, there are like solid reasons why you can't start too. But I think people make. I do it all the time. I make excuses why I shouldn't do something, or why.
I mean, here's the deal: like, if you said start or die, they're going to figure out a way to start. Right?
You think so? Yeah.
It's just like how strong is that desire, right?
Yeah.
An easy excuse for me would be like, well, I have a wife and kids. I can't risk it all.
Yeah.
Well, sitting in my position is more risky than not taking any action at all.
For sure.
And it's like and I think it has to do a lot with how we just kind of try to reason away the fear of failure, like the fear of like, well, if I actually do this, if I actually move this ship out of harbor, I might hit a wave or two. Yeah, but you were built for the sea. You weren't built for the harbor, right?
Yeah, exactly. But there's still strategy around that too,
exactly,
right? And that's I guess the other important part is you shouldn't. If starting to you is quit your job so that you can focus on this, but you have no money to support yourself, like you shouldn't start that way.
Yeah.
You should start a different way. It's just like you wouldn't take a car out to sea.
Right.
Cars are for the road, right?
Unless it's
obviously. Well, yeah. You take a boat out, but a boat is designed to handle waves.
Yes.
So there's still smart ways of starting.
Exactly.
But that would be, if I were to go back, I would have started earlier.
Yeah. And you'd have learned what those smarter ways of executing that vision were. Yeah. That's good. It's awesome, man.
Well, I'm really excited to share with you that What Not to Do has been gaining traction and momentum and experiencing some early wins, which is super exciting and reminded me this show is about you, it's for you, and I couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much. If you're part of a company, if you own a company, and you think your message would be really, really relevant and valuable to the folks that are part of this community, entrepreneurs, leaders, public figures, and those aspiring as such, reach out to me. My contact info is in the show notes, and we can sit down and consider what it would look like to partner together in equipping the world for success.
All right, man. Well, before we get into the final gauntlet here, dude, tell me about your fiance. That's super exciting. So when's the big day?
So we recently engaged, so we haven't tied down a solid date, but we're looking at summer of 2021.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She's a teacher at Kimberly High School, so she obviously summer is one of the better times to manage that and to get married. So
it's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's just awesome. She has been one of those key components of situating the vision in my life in terms of where I want to go, and one of those motivators that have been really an important part of my life. So
it's awesome.
Yeah,
huge blessing. And like you said before, important who you pick, right? Which is awesome. Well, dude, I'm very excited for you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, how'd you guys meet?
We're thrilled. Actually, through when I was working a full-time job, I would a lot of times go and help high school theater departments with their productions and lighting, specifically lighting design. So I met her through working on a show at Kimberly a couple years ago.
Is she on the tech side of things or on the?
Well, she's a choir director, so
awesome.
she's on the music side, which
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So, do you guys ever do anything musical together, or thought about?
Well, we worked on a couple productions at Kimberly together, but other than that, we haven't worked.
No aspirations to start a band or anything like that?
No, nothing like that, no.
Well, that's awesome, man. Again, super excited for you guys.
Yeah, no, we're thrilled. Thank you.
Cool. So, we are inescapably influenced in life. We can't help it. Even from within the womb, we're being shaped by sounds and noises and words. It's a crazy, right, environment. The stress of the mother affecting the baby inside the womb. It's crazy. And I liken it to being in a garden, right? If you have a rose, that rose starts out as a seed, and the promise of the rose is wrapped up in the seed, right? And it's going to get planted in the earth, and contingent on the environment, it'll flourish, right? Or not. If it falls on blacktop, probably not going anywhere, right? If it gets planted in a nice garden bed and tended with water and sun in proportionate measures, it's going to be absolutely beautiful and reproduce itself. I think human life is like that, where we have this potential wrapped up inside of us, and we're meant for ultimate flourishing, and our environments really matter, really dictate how we turn out. And which is cool, because sometimes we don't choose our initial environments, but as life goes on, we can, right? And we can take ownership for who we spend time with, who we're around, where we're planted, if you want to extend that. So I'm curious for your life, man, and probably several different folks. But who's someone, when you think back on your life and where you are today, that if you took them out of the equation, you wouldn't be who you are. You wouldn't be where you are. Not a chance. Who comes to mind for you, man?
Yeah, so I have several mentors in my life. One of which, my parents have had a really positive influence in my life. Supported me through all aspirations and getting started in business young, which was awesome.
Did you ever work with your dad in his business?
I didn't work with him directly in his business, but grew up with sawdust in my lungs, and spent a lot of time with him in the shop, which a lot of great, practical life lessons, but also just, one of my, as an entrepreneur, you build businesses, right? There's a lot of parallels between carpentry and building a business. You got to start with a plan and execute, right? You have to know the right tools and all this kind of stuff, right? So my father has been a really important influence in my life. More recently, though, in high school, a buddy's dad really helped me shape kind of my business acumen and realize that I could change my life if I wanted to.
That's awesome.
And there's I forget the author's name, but there's Rich Dad, Poor Dad kind of thing.
Robert Kiyosaki.
And I would consider this guy to be my rich dad. He was the very successful in his business venture and in his career. Had a lot of great lessons about money, but also just like starting, I guess, is probably, I should accredit to him, is you just got to get started. So yeah, I credit him. Of course, there's
what was his industry?
So he was in technology, but there's one of the big businesses down in the Fox Valley area. He was a co-founder of. Cool. They do a lot of outsourcing for customer customer service and stuff.
Awesome.
But yeah, really helped me shape like where. Just gave me the inspiration and the motivation that I needed to see that, like, oh yeah, I could start something and it can change my life.
Yeah.
And it's up to you.
Yeah.
So, and I still go back to him today and talk about pains that I'm having, or different successes even, and that kind of stuff. So he's an influential guy.
That's awesome. It's so helpful to have someone who's been on the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
Who can see farther than you can, but who's willing to come back down and help you up the mountain.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Sounds like he's that guy for you.
Yeah, for sure. He, very grateful for his time and willingness to just chat sometimes over cigars or, whatever it is.
You're a cigar guy?
I used to be. Now with the new fiance, that's one of those things I said. But we'll see. I do enjoy a cigar here and there.
I'll talk to your fiance for you.
Yeah, please. Let her know. Otherwise, like I mentioned earlier, but podcasts and like people that you don't actually meet or know. One of the most influential guys that I listened to right around the time where I decided, like, okay, I need to quit my job and take this seriously. It was Keith Cunningham, and he was on another gentleman's podcast, Mike Dillard. But that one episode, I'll attribute to giving me that like final push that I needed to say, okay, it's time to get serious.
Maybe if you can find that, we could put that episode in the show notes.
Yeah, I have it on my phone. It's saved on my phone, so I can send that to you for sure.
That'd be awesome. Maybe there'd be others that would be listening that would be really, really helped by that too.
Yeah, so I'll give you just some context. I was working a job, liked my job. Certain things about it, or whatever, but basically, in this episode, Keith talks about, there's different types of business leaders, there's owners, and there's operators, and you want to work for an owner. You don't necessarily, depending on the type of person, you don't necessarily want to work for an operator, someone who's got their hands in the business and, needs to control everything. There's a huge difference between an owner and an operator, and that single episode was the tipping point for me. So
awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. Oh, so good. So thankful to have folks come along in our lives and able to help shape us.
It's needed.
Yep. All right, man. Not the best, but what's the worst advice that you hear? Either floating around these days, or even that you maybe were given at some point in life. You're like, dude, that's just the worst advice. Maybe you thought it was, the bee's knees at the time, but like looking back, you're like, that was just horrible. What do you think, man? What's the worst advice you hear floating around?
Well, okay, so as a 23-year-old entrepreneur, you get a lot of advice, solicited and unsolicited. And I'm always...
There's an app for that.
I'm always interested in hearing, from other entrepreneurs and the advice that they give.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, and this isn't necessarily around like a certain piece of advice that I've gotten, but something that I have recently like really honed into is when you get advice from someone, what is their intention? Right? And this a lot of times I will say is the difference between good advice and the worst advice you'll ever hear. When I talk with someone and they're sitting here telling me something and they say something, something that I'm like, whatever, I leave the conversation and I think to myself, why did they tell me that? Was it why do they want to help me? Because obviously they're giving me advice to help push me along, right? And one of the things I think about is, well, did they say that to me because they want to see me succeed and help me succeed? Or did they say that to me because they want to say that they helped me succeed?
Yeah.
And there's two very different intentions between those points. And a lot of times the worst advice that I'll get, or the advice that I, say thank you and, don't take any action on, or, take some action but not full action, is I find that they give me the advice probably for the wrong reason. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I appreciate any advice people are willing to give me, but the intention behind it is really important, and something that I've recently really kind of honed into is why do people give you advice? But the worst advice I've ever received, it probably has to do with actually, I don't. This is a tricky question. Like I said, you get a lot of advice every day. I guess generally, some of the worst advice that I've received has to do with defense, right? I think, and maybe this is just me being young and ignorant, but sometimes people will give you advice that is just too defensive and not enough offense, right? You have to hold up, don't go tell the world, what you're doing, because you need to do this protection and this protection and this protection first. And by the time you finish all of this, someone else has done it and, is, seeing mass success with it. Or you have this, idea of I'm going to open the floodgates and people are going to flood in, and that's why, you have to protect yourself with all these kind of things. It's just not necessarily the case. So probably some of the worst advice I've gotten has to do with, being too defensive and risk adverse instead of, when you're a startup, you kind of have to assume some risk with everything that you do.
Yeah, it's good. I especially love what you said, too, with the intention behind the advice. I think sometimes, I've heard it said that the most closed-minded people are the most open-mouthed. Right?
Yeah.
And kind of they're the ones most ready to give you their opinion.
Yeah.
But they're so set in their ways, and maybe the most risk-averse type of people.
Sure.
And they have your best interest in mind, quotes around, your best interest. And in it, sometimes I think it could be maybe they've justified why they gave up on building their dreams, right?
Yeah.
And you're out there working hard, taking calculated risks to build your dreams. And that's sometimes hard for people to accept, right? And it kind of reminds them of what maybe they gave up on in life or what they could have done. And sometimes advice unintentionally flows from that spot in somebody,
Yeah.
But and maybe even a way to phrase the worst advice is the best offense is a good defense.
Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe the best offense is a good offense, right? Or
I mean, you need both, right?
Offense,
you can't score without offense. I mean, I guess you can score sometimes with defense, but generally you want to move the ball.
Yeah. But if you take that conservation mindset where you're constantly defending, constantly just conserving, you're not actually expanding and growing.
Yeah. And so I guess my something that I'm not too young, but I still talk with other entrepreneurs and offer some, here's some insight from what I've done. But I try to, I've been purposely thinking, why am I telling this person that? Is it because I want to say that I helped them get to the next level, or is it because I actually want to help them? And if it isn't because you actually want to help them, and if it's the other one, then don't give them the advice. It's my opinion.
So how do you discern that? When someone gives you advice, because that can be really hard to qualify.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Whether or not because they might think that they have your best interest in mind, but
there is no litmus test for that, right?
Yeah. So how do you decide when to say thanks but no thanks and dismiss the advice based on whether or not they might have your success in mind?
Yeah, and I guess I shouldn't say, you can receive advice from people who don't have your success in mind, but it's more of a, for the people offering advice out there, which there are a lot, and especially to younger entrepreneurs who have a lot of failure ahead of them, think about like what your actual intention is. Because intention is important. It's important to me, and I know it's important to it's important to everyone, I think. But yeah, discerning, a guy that I really look up to down in the Fox Valley, he's a tech leader who works out in the West Coast, has a home office here in Kimberly. He said to me once at a party, Andrew, you get shoulded a lot. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, people probably come up to you and say, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. And he said, I don't want to should you. But, and then he told me some advice. But what I liked about that is he's totally right. As an entrepreneur and as a younger person too, you get shoulded. But one of your jobs and one of the important things that as a entrepreneur you need to do is what should you pay attention to? Yeah. And it's part of that process. And there's no, like you said, there's no great way of qualifying advice or like a litmus test or anything like that. But it is part of your job or part of your prerogatives as an entrepreneur or as anyone giving advice to determine, like, is this something I should be paying attention to, or is this something that I don't need to worry about right now? Yeah.
And that's important. So maybe even another takeaway as far as worse advice is just to, in a sense, unwittingly, and without qualifying, accept every advice that's given your way. Yeah. It's like you could just be spinning and
and I guess that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah. Like so do this, do that.
Yeah.
It's like a pinball machine, like bang, 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 bang. That would not be fun. I love that idea. I've never heard that idea of you get shoulded.
I should credit the guy. So it's Mike Diamond is his name. He's a blogger. I think MikeDiamond.com is his website.
Cool. We should get him on the show. That'd be fun.
Yeah. He's a really great guy. But he told me that, and I loved it. It stuck with me. So
don't get shit on in life, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. All right, man. So it's rush hour in every major city in the world. Billions of people stuck in a traffic jam, listening to what not to do. Probably this episode with Andrew Schmitz, and they look up, and wouldn't you know it, it's Andrew's billboard.
Yeah.
What message do they see?
It would be a digital billboard, by the way, because technology. No, it would say something like, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Yeah. And that's a key. It's probably what I'm known for. If you went and asked my associates or my friends, what is something Andrew says, and that would be it. If it was easy, everyone would do it, and that's why you should do it.
Yeah, that's good, man. We all need to hear that, right?
Yeah.
We all need to hear that. All right, bonus round. 3 books that you would readily give away as gifts, or that you think are just really important reads for someone charting out life.
Yeah.
They don't have to be your top 3 books, but 3 books that you think would just be like, bam.
Yeah. One of my favorites that I recently read is given as a gift, Runaway Species. I forget who it's by, but it's 2 authors. It's a neuroscientist and a musician, I think, or an artist. And they talk about, the human brain, and they make draw a lot of parallels between creativity and science and all this kind of stuff. And it's been super insightful from just it basically tells you why you're creative and how you can maximize your creativity to provide value in your life and other people's lives. So awesome. Really love that book. Also Lean Startup, I mentioned it earlier. Yep. That's a method that we subscribe to at Proceed, and is proven its value to me, worth the cost of the book for sure. Yep. I'm trying to think of a third one. Mark Burwell is an entrepreneur in the area, and he's got a book that I was just given, and I started reading. I didn't fully read it yet, but The Evolutionary Entrepreneur, I think is what it's called. But there's some great bits in there that I recently started reading it, but I've already taken into my life. But to support a local guy.
Cool. And we'll have those linked in the show notes so people
awesome.
Get that. Awesome. And also with that, if people want to get in touch with you, man, wanted to just learn more about what you're doing, want to do business with you, just want to get to know you personally, etc. How can they find you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Andrew Schmitz. Proceed. We have all like the social media accounts as well. I'm also on Twitter. I think it's aschmitz14 or something like that. But yeah, no, feel free. Otherwise, my email is andrew@proceed.app. And I love hearing from people and figuring out any way that I can help them. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Andrew Schmitz, this has been awesome, man. I've loved this. It's been helpful for me hearing your story, learning from you, and I'm pretty optimistic that there's a few people out there that are going to be really helped by this episode, man.
Happy to. Really excited to talk about entrepreneurship and the journey. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, such a great conversation with Andrew Schmitz. And again, great last name. It's probably all in the name. I mean, let's just be honest. No, but in all seriousness, love how thoughtful he is, how insightful he is. So let's get into it and recap what he told us not to do. First, don't rush into partnerships. Don't rush into partnerships. And if you recall his story, he mentioned that the folks that were partnering with him in the beginning, they weren't all bought into the vision ultimately. And that's really, really important to make sure that all those align, especially when things get tough. Don't just assume that there's 100% buy-in, that everyone gets the vision, that everyone's really clear on that. As a leader, that's on you. It's really easy to come up with a vision. It's really, really difficult to hold the vision. And so don't rush into partnerships, and make sure that everyone's aligned in the vision, and then hold it for them. Secondly, don't think you need to develop a product to test assumptions. Don't think that you need to develop your product to test assumptions. I mean, this was really, really cool. Kind of like that. You probably heard it said, invest in what's 3 feet from you, around you, etc. Probably just botched that, but you get what I'm saying. Invest in things that are really, really close to you, right? And so I love Andrew's example and saying, hey, Snapchat, like here's a tool that's already built out. We can use that to really test our product, to test the market demand, see if we can actually accomplish what we want to go for, and iterate in the meantime. And so then when we're ready to build a product, we have a really, really good and crystal clear idea of what we want. So don't think that you have to have this perfect product in order to even figure out the market demand or to test your assumptions. Find what's available and use that. And last but not least, don't think you need tech skills to build a tech business. Again, don't think you need tech skills to build a tech business. And man, I think this is so true in all of life. We think that we have to have all the expertise if we're going to go into this particular niche. And in this case, developing an app. If we can't develop the app ourselves, then we have no business trying to develop or put an app out to market. And that can be further from the truth. I think Andrew was really wise in how he unpacked this for us. And again, it goes back to having the vision and holding it, and then assembling the right people around you to execute the vision. So huge. Well, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to connect with Andrew, his info is in the show notes, so go check that out. Also, his books will be there that he recommended. Really, really good stuff. And I want to remind you that this podcast is about you, it's for you, and I couldn't do without you. So thank you so much for listening. We're getting really, really good traction, a lot of exciting momentum going on, and you guys are just a huge part of that. So thank you so much for listening. Continue to share this with your friends. And if you haven't already, and only think if you deserve it, only if you think the show deserves it, go ahead and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Really, really help us to get these stories out to the world. You can support us financially if you'd like to over at patreon.com/whatnotttodo. You can give some coffee money or whatever you want to do there, or give more, give your heart's desire. It'd be great. Help me be able to really ramp up to do this full time. And I hope that you guys are getting more in use value than what I'm taking from you in cash value. So if you give, awesome, thank you so much. If it's your time, awesome. You're spending valuable time in your commute to work, whenever you're listening to listen to this. That's an investment, and I hope that you're getting so much more in return than what's being taken from you or what you're giving in your time. That's really, really important to me. So give me some feedback. If that's not true, I want to know it, because I want to make sure that we can add even more value and to correct that for you. And last, if you're a company that would have a really relevant message that would align well with our guests and our listeners, and you think you want to get your message in front of them, reach out to me. I'm looking for folks that, again, will really align with our vision here, that want to give more than they take, give more in use value than they take in cash value. If you think that your product or service or message really aligns with that, reach out to me, and let's take a look at what I would consider to partner together in equipping the world for success. Well, it's been said that good men learn from their own mistakes, but great men, they learn from the mistakes of others. So go and be great, and we'll see you next time.